decisions have to be made for investments or withdrawal. So the question is, could there be other reasons why decision makers may be interested in technology forecasting apart from just investing from an investment perspective alone? Are there, from your experience, are there other reasons why they may be interested?
Yeah, let us understand a bit more the meaning of the term investing. When we are talking about to invest, we are not talking about financial investment. We are talking about human resource investment. We are talking about time investment. We are talking about an investment of energy, investment of materials, investment of knowledge. Let me give you an example. When we take a decision about educational program for the business school, okay, or for the technological university, we need to align the program for our students with what will happen in the future. This is investment also. This is investment into the education. So investment in this very slide that I tried to discuss, this is investment, not only financial investment. Shall we go in this direction or another direction, or shall we stop to put a lot of efforts to something which is going to be substituted in the coming future? This was the meaning of this kind of sentence. Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. That makes it much clearer for me. The next question I had was, you said that some companies sort of neglect strategy, so my question is this a specific geography? Is it limited to a certain geography? In your experience, is it limited to a certain geography, certain type of companies, a certain type of organizations, or is this a general phenomena where there are, or completely different, is that they are under the wrong impression of what is strategy itself? They think strategy is A, but it is actually B. So what is your, I mean, it's a two-parter question.
In fact, the first part of the question, as far as I understood, in fact, this is an international phenomenon. It does not depend on the company. It does not depend on the company. It depends mostly on the stage of evolution of the company. The young companies, or today we use startup for this, for describing the companies which were just established and so on, they always establish for certain mission. They always establish for certain idea which will be demand in the future that they are going to satisfy, or demand in the present that they are going to satisfy. Those companies, they are growing, and they have a two choice. Either they grow and continue to grow after they pass the phase of startup, or either they just collapse. And we already know that more than 90% of startups, they collapse after the short period of time. This is just a sign that the strategy was not chosen properly. Okay, strategy was not aligned what is really happened. There are another part of answering this question, but there are the companies who are living a bit longer. We cannot consider them as a startup because they are already 10 years on the market. But we already learned about clock speed of different technologies, and we know that it is normal that in some industries we don't change product or we don't change process within 10 years. So those companies, if they don't review their strategies, okay, they're going to collapse also. But there are companies who are staying hundreds of years, like let me use as an example IBM. Okay, Those are the company which exist more than 100 years. This is example of the company who reviewed their strategy several times. Okay, they already did it. It does not depend from the geography. It depends on the product that we are using. It depends on the process of operating company. If I answer your question, did I forget something?
No, this is fine. I mean, both parts of the questions are answered. This came from the a quote. I can not quote, but I have overheard a few decision makers saying that, oh, these technology forecasting, we in India don't do it. So I assumed he was referring to a particular geography alone. But that's only, like you're saying, that's a bias that that gentleman probably had. About a certain geography. Thank you for addressing that question. I now understand. The next question I have is, this is another commonly asked question. When I talk about technology forecasting to an audience, they say, oh, technology, my company is a non-technology company. I'm a non-governmental organization. What is your advice to them? Do they need to perform technology forecast as well? In their own words, they are non-technological.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this part of question. In fact, it depends how do we define technology, okay? Because whatever solution we use, this is a certain way that this is a technology. Okay, this is a way to satisfy certain needs. Even non-governmental organization, okay, when they operate, they transform some input into some output in order to satisfy certain needs. So they use some solution. Probably they have not a lot of hardware. By the way, they spend energy. They spend not only electricity, but they spend, human knowledge, energy in order to organize. So the way how do we organize things, the way how do we organize, for instance, educational process, this is a technology also. Because this is an artificially made system in order to accomplish certain tasks, to satisfy certain needs. So that's why, if we define the technology like we defined in both of our course, this is a hardware, skill to know how to use it, okay, and the policies and regulation which regulate this application. We can see that the forecasting, technological forecasting, this is something which is useful for any kind of organization. Because the hardware, for instance, it is not only computer, this is a method. If you look to the forecasting activity, the hardware, this is a method. And knowledge how to use this method, this is what we try to share with you within this course. We share the knowledge how to use certain method, how to use certain hardware. Okay, and if you are involved into the process of decision making, so you have a technology for forecasting. Can it be the answer for your question?
Oh yes,
did I take
absolutely.
It properly?
I agree with you that just because it does not have a hardware or something that we often call technology, it doesn't mean that non-governmental organizations or service organizations don't have any technology to deal with. So I agree with the point of view that it's an input, there's an output, and there's something in between. It has to be a system, and that is technology itself in its purest definition. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, the marketing strategy, this is a technology.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. Yeah. One question I have is regarding the followers. I really appreciate that entire slide itself. Particularly, my concentration was on the fact that there are followers who are, to use your words, seduced by success. No. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Followers who say, why do we need to look at what's coming up? We don't need to predict. Yes, that's the one. We don't need to predict. Are there any specific examples you may give so that it stays in my mind? I agree with this concept, but can you give us some examples of one company at least?
Yeah, in fact, there are most of the companies. I mean, the number of the companies, they start as a followers. They start to produce something which others producing, but they try to change the way and they try to find their part of the market. But sooner or later, if companies survive, if they took their market share and they run the process which is profitable, okay, they arrive to the very fruitful idea that it is not enough just to follow others. We need to be pioneers in certain domain. And myself personally, in the end of 90s, I was invited to work at LG group of companies, because at those time, those group of companies, they put as a strategy to be pioneers in what they produced. And those group of companies, they produced not only electronics, not only home appliance, they made chemical products, machinery, and many other things. So at those time, they already took the market share on the international market as a very good producers with very high quality products. But even they can follow others very fast and very efficiently. They saw that if they don't change their strategy, if they don't appear in certain area, be pioneers, the company cannot continue the same, continue to their trajectory, because there are always other competitors who can do, for instance, copying faster. From this point of view, yeah. So most of the companies, they start as a followers, but if they don't shift to their mood to be pioneers, they will collapse. This is a law of business, law of competition, law of nature, if you like.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dimitri. I certainly learned a lot of things in this session of ours. I hope the learners also pick up some equally things that are useful, and they can post
Thank
their
you for your
questions.
questions. They help me to be more clear in ideas that I have sometimes in mind.
Okay, thank you.